Oh, I heard a break. Okay. Okay, this is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. This is the Truth Attack Hour, and yes, that's right, folks. We're back. We're back with the Truth Attack. So, let's get right into this. We are the Liberty Works Radio Network, and we do need the support of the members of the listening audience to keep the broadcast coming and the shows being broadcast. So, if you enjoy the information, the topics, the discussions, the insight, the perspective, and the guests on the other shows on the network, we sure would appreciate it. If you could find your way over to the LibertyWorksRadioNetwork.com website and get signed up as a subscribing member, even if it's as little as $10, $20 a month. Every membership counts, and we do need the support of the audience to keep the network and the broadcast operating. And if you want to get fully informed on the maladministration of the federal income tax by the IRS, the DOJ, and the federal judges of the district and circuit courts all over America, you need to find your way over to taxfreedom.com. That's tax-freedom.com and start reading. And if you want to get fully informed and help us out here, you can find your way over to irszoom.com and pick yourself up a copy of The Simple Truth About Income Tax, version 2.0, which I've just put out in the last 45 days, and updates my original book to include the consequences of the Donald Trump tax change in December of 2017 when they repealed the federal income tax, which they've been enforcing for the last 65 years as though it were a direct tax under the 16th Amendment. But that's been repealed. It's gone. There is no more income tax that touches the labors of the American people. And why more Americans haven't come to understand that as a consequence of the new legislation is hard to understand, because I've had the information out there on the internet now for 7 years, and nobody seems to care that they don't have to pay income tax anymore. The whole thing's been a fraud for 65 years. It's all exposed in The Simple Truth About Income Tax. It's just $6. It's immediate download. It's about a 100-page PDF. And it exposes everything, all the consequences of the tax change and the repeal of the old law in December of 2017. It shows you what they really did in 1913 with the original legislation, which was not to pass an income tax act that taxed the labors and earnings of the American people as though they were all taxable activities or revenues derived from federally taxable activities, which are only activities subject to taxation by impost, duty, or excise. And none of those taxing powers touch labor, which is why the income tax has been repealed, because the new constitutional authority for the current law was stated by Congress in the congressional record as being Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1. That means the IRS and the DOJ can't argue in court anymore that the 16th Amendment is involved. And without the 16th Amendment, you can't get to a tax on labor, because impost taxes foreign activity and foreign imports and activities in foreign places where the government, the federal government, has some jurisdiction, like territories and possessions, or in foreign countries under a tax treaty, but not in the 50 states. Imposts tax foreign activity and foreign imports and foreign persons. Duties tax exported goods. That's why we have duty-free shops. If you're leaving the country, you can buy American goods completely free of American taxes and take them out of the country for consumption or resale in the foreign market. We don't have any shortages of material resources or goods, so we don't impose duties on exported goods to discourage the removal of those assets from this country and the taking or selling of them in another. So we don't have any duties to speak of. And excise is the power to tax the manufacture, consumption, and sale of commodities in the country, like alcohol, tobacco, firearms. It's the power to tax licenses to pursue certain occupations, like a license to sell alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, or to do interstate transport of petroleum fuels. And it's the power to tax the corporate privilege, where it is actually a privilege tax. And the privilege tax is the privilege of incorporation. And everything the company does, interest, rent, dividends, compensation, everything the company does is taxable because it is earned through the taxable privilege, making it subject to the excise. But labor isn't part of the excise powers. And in fact, Congress passed a law in the 1930s, Title 15, Section 17, which says the labor of a human being is not a commodity or article of commerce. And that removes labor from subjectivity to any excise taxation. So if it's not an excise, it's not a duty, and it's not an impost, what is the tax? Under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1, since January of 2018. I'll tell you what it is. It is exactly what I've been telling you it has been for the last 35 years. It's an indirect tax in the form of an impost enacted under tariff legislation in 1913, specifically the Underwood-Simmons Tariff Act of October 3rd, 1913, which required, according to the Supreme Court, the collection of the tax at the source, where it makes the payor of the taxable money the taxpayer who is responsible for withholding some of the money as tax from the payment made to the foreign person. And then these tax collectors, the withholding agents, are made liable for the tax they've collected from foreign persons. And there was no authority to collect the tax from American citizens ever put in place. They just added a victory tax in 1942 as a 2-year war revenue measure, and when it expired, they put in place the new withholding laws, which imposed no tax. They just authorized the employee to allow withholding for tax from his paycheck without understanding there is no tax imposed, and that he should be claiming exempt on his W-4, not married in 2 or single in 0. Particularly not single and 0 when you're 16 and starting your first year at work. You claim exempt. You didn't have any money earned last year. You didn't earn any money. You're not going to owe any tax last year. You had no liability because you didn't work, and you're working part-time, and you're not going to owe tax this year. If you only work part-time at $10 an hour, 1,000 hours is 10 grand. The filing threshold is $13,850. You're exempt. Any money that you withheld is allowed to be withheld is all going to be refunded to you. And believe me, you need the money more week to week than you do needing $3,000-4,000 on April 15th. You should claim exempt. You have no liability. The tax is dead. The original legislation was a tax on foreigners, not citizens. They used the victory tax of 1942 or 43 and 44, to deceive the American people into believing the federal government had the right and the legal power to tax your labor directly, and they used the World War as the excuse to attach themselves to your earnings, pushing the patriotic duty for everyone to pitch in and sacrifice in order to defeat the Nazis in the European theater and the Imperial Japanese in the Pacific. And they did. We did it. America did it. They saved the world and ended up with a system that destroys America because we've been a divided class warfare system ever since. There has been no unified representation. In fact, that's impossible now under this system of class legislation that divides the population into different classes, wealthy, ultra-wealthy, middle class, and poor, and then taxes each class and writes different laws for each class. That's unconstitutional. With respect to citizens, the tax must be uniform. Graduated taxes are the second plank of the Communist Manifesto. A graduated income tax, specifically, is the second plank of the Communist Manifesto. Congress and the IRS and the DOJ and the federal courts, the lower courts, have been enforcing communism on the American people. Communism. They're forcing you to practice communism. It's got nothing to do with funding the government. Not one single penny goes to the United States Treasury. You want proof? Look at the back of the last check you sent to the IRS with the Form 1040 on April 15th. See who got the money. See if it says deposit to the U.S. Treasury, which is what's required by law under 7809. See if it says that. See if it says required deposit to the U.S. Treasury. It doesn't say that. You know what it says? It says pay to any FRB. Federal Reserve Bank. Why is a private corporation, the Federal Reserve Bank, cashing your so-called tax check? That's supposed to be money for the government to operate, not for the bankers to have and use. It's got nothing to do with taxation. It never did. There is no tax imposed. It's a peonage debt service system. Every single penny taken from the paychecks of the American worker is sent around the Treasury to the Federal Reserve Bank. That's why you have no credit for tax paid. You shouldn't have to file to get a credit. They took it out of your paycheck. They told you it was taxed. The employer collected it. He sent it in. The law says it has to be deposited in the U.S. Treasury, and it doesn't get deposited to the U.S. Treasury. It goes around the Treasury to the Federal Reserve Bank, servicing the $36 trillion in debt owed by Congress because of the unconstitutional system that has given a monopoly on currency and credit to the private corporate bank, which is neither federal and has no reserves. The whole system has been kited out of thin air. You don't really think the Federal Reserve bankers had $36 trillion just laying around to lend to the U.S. Congress, do you? Really? Really? Where'd they get it? They bought it. They bought it for 4 cents per $100 bill, which is what our Treasury does. It doesn't just print the money. If it just printed the money, there wouldn't be any debt. First, it prints the money, then it sells it to the Federal Reserve Bank. That's why it's a Federal Reserve note, which is what it says right at the top of every single bill. It doesn't say United States dollar because they're not. They're notes. Notes are evidence of debt. Dollars are evidence of asset. There's a difference between real money and fiat script. Fiat script ends up being used on the walls as wallpaper or in the bathroom as toilet paper. They never had $36 trillion. They kited the very first amount. They kited the first check to fund the bank. They never put any money in, not one dime. They wrote a paper check and then ordered the bills, put it in the thing, and then used the paid for the bought bills to pay to honor the check they wrote. The whole system's a fraud, and it's not about taxation. It's not about funding the government. It's about enslaving the American people. It's about usurping authority over the assets and resources of the people in the entire nation to force them to work for the end that the Federal Reserve Bank deems most efficient. Most efficient for what? Yeah, that's right. Maintaining its own existence. To hell with the consequences to the American people. Look at what they've done for the last 2.5 years by turning off lending to Main Street while printing out $17 trillion. $17 trillion during COVID that they passed out to the institutions. So Main Street's been in a recession with the government lying about the job numbers for 2.5 years. You've been in a recession since you had 2 down quarters. And the White House sent their spokesperson out to say, it's not a recession. 2 down quarters isn't a recession. We're redefining it. Yeah, right. You've been in a recession for 2.5 years. Which is why the American people can't get access to capital or credit while Wall Street is rolling in it. It's at an all-time high with $5 trillion still sitting on the sidelines looking for a buy-in opportunity of a market that's at an all-time high. Okay, I think I hear the first commercial break coming up. This is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. This is the Truth Attack Hour. Get signed up as a subscribing member and find your way over to irszoom.com and get help. We'll be back in 5. Okay, this is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. This is the Truth Attack Hour, and we're back. So, the income tax has been repealed. It is gone. There is no longer any possibility of the government arguing the 16th Amendment authorized a direct tax, which is what the income tax is based on, which is what they've been doing for 75 years. That authority is gone. The authority for the new income tax law was specified as Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1, and that clause authorizing taxation by impost, duty, and excise cannot be used to tax labor. The income tax is over. It was never a real thing. The whole thing's been a fraud. All those arguments the government and the courts have been saying are frivolous, that the 16th Amendment, it's frivolous not to say the 16th Amendment authorizes it. It turns out they had the frivolous argument. There's no enabling enforcement clause in the amendment to authorize Congress to write any new law. If the 16th Amendment creates a power to tax directly and without limitation, that would certainly be a new law, a new power to tax that needs new law, because before the amendment, all direct taxes had to be limited by apportionate and proportionate imposition. So if now, under the amendment, there's a direct tax without limitation, that's new, and Congress needs to be authorized by the amendment to write law to enforce it. That enabling enforcement clause doesn't exist. Congress isn't authorized to write law. The court can't show that Congress is authorized to write law for that alleged power, and that means the court can't take subject matter jurisdiction, and it could never do so. Every single federal judge in the country is guilty as sin of operating without jurisdiction for the last 75 years to enforce communism in place of constitutional taxation, specifically the second plank of the Communist Manifesto, which reads a heavy, progressive, or graduated income tax. And this is why you've lost control of your country. This is why the population is divided into classes. This is why the politicians can no longer represent the whole of the American people, but must pick one class or the other. And this is why the entire system is now divided 50-50. Because half the population on Earth believes in God, and half the population on Earth is too afraid to believe in anything except the lies that other men tell them. So they believe in government. And history shows that the people who believe in government instead of God have been betrayed 100% of the time to be enslaved by that false authority of man. Only God delivers freedom and prosperity through faith in God. You put your faith in government, you end up a slave, servicing $36 trillion in debt for the rest of your life, your children's lives, your grandchildren's lives, your great-grandchildren's lives, till they wake up homeless on the continent your forefathers fought and died to preserve as a free nation for your progeny. And you're throwing it all away by allowing the courts to divide you rather than from the jury box telling the court to get lost, not guilty. And that's why they only selectively prosecute wealthy people that they can put in front of the jury and make appear unsympathetic. If they went after the average Joe by the thousands, which they do with the levies, but not in court, well, they wouldn't appear so sympathetic to the government anymore. The defendants wouldn't be so unsympathetic. He's just an average Joe. Why are you stealing his property? Because it's a system of enslavement, and there can be no escapees. Everyone has to be enslaved, or everyone will escape. They've been lying to you for 75 years, straight up lying to you. It was never a direct tax under the 16th Amendment. It's always been an indirect tax where income is not the object of the tax, nor is it the subject of taxation. It is the yardstick by which the amount of tax owed is measured. The amount of tax owed on the taxable earnings derived from an activity subject to some federal impost, duty, or excise. If there is no impost, duty, or excise, there is nothing to measure. You don't owe tax because you worked. You don't owe tax because you made money. That's communism. That's your money to keep, and by God, don't you need it right now? Aren't ends hard enough to meet without letting them steal 30% of your check so they can borrow more? 40 trillion, 50 trillion. You understand at some point it's going to incinerate? As goes the currency, so goes the fate of the nation. How's your purchasing power holding up over the last 3.5 years of Democrat administration? How's it holding up? How's the price of fuel, gasoline, diesel? How's the price of energy? How's the price of food, travel, transportation, housing? Do you like what the Democrats are doing to your dollar and your purchasing power and your quality of life because of the excess of printing and stupidity in policy mandates? Everybody buy an EV? And what, collapse the grid because you're shutting down the nuclear reactors that are needed to put out the electricity to transform the grid, to society? You can't electrify without nuclear reactors. It's stupid. It's stupid. Literally stupid to say you can do it without that. Look at what's happened. In 3 years, you've doubled the price of the utility energy. You're destroying America with these stupid policies. And if you vote for a Democrat, you're going to get more because this woman is lying. She's lying about everything. If she gets in, it'll probably be with the Democrat Congress, and she will sign anything the Democrat Congress sends her. Gun control, take away your guns, sign it. EV mandate, sign it. No fracking, sign it. Open the border, sign it. 10,000 agents to process 20 million a year into the country, sign it. She'll sign anything because she stands for nothing except raw power. She could give a crap about the American people. She didn't answer one single question at the debate. Oh, do you think people are better off or worse off than 3.5 years ago? Oh, I grew up middle class, opportunity economy. What the hell does that mean? You've destroyed the opportunities. You aren't creating them. You've destroyed them. Energy is everything as long as you have the Democrat energy and policy, which will be as long as you have a Democratic administration. You can expect things to get worse. They will get worse. As energy goes up, quality of life and society goes down, and dependence on government goes up, which is what the Democrats want. That's why they're passing out money to 10 million illegal aliens. Credit cards, hotel, Medicare, food, housing. It's all going to buy the new votes. 10 million new possible votes. Doesn't matter that they're not citizens. We can register them to vote in states. And they'll swing the election, and they'll prevent the liberal states violating the Constitution, passing out money to the undeserving, stealing it from the hardworking and the productive so that they won't lose. They'll be counted in the census so they won't lose congressional representation as intelligent Americans, productive Americans bail and leave those liberal, high tax, high crime, high regulation nightmares and move to reasonable places like Texas, Florida, Idaho, So the Democrats are out to steal America. They've been stealing your paycheck for 75 years. They figure now it's time to steal the rest of America so they can turn this into a global system where they steal the assets from the rest of the world. And I've said before, that's why you're at war with Russia. It's got nothing to do with Ukraine. The globalists want control of the natural resources in Russia, and Putin is in the way. So he has to be removed. They figure with a socialist America and a Democrat administration, if they can get control of Russia's resources, they can run the planet. All they got to do is bring China on board. So that's why you're at war with Russia. It's got nothing to do with the Ukraine. Biden could have stopped the invasion right from the get-go by helping the Ukrainians to oppose the buildup of Russian troops on the border. But what did he do? Oh, I don't want to provoke Putin. If you don't oppose the massing on the border of enemy troops, you invite the enemy in. You don't provoke him, you invite the enemy in. If he's provoked, you have a conflict at the border and he's stopped. If you don't oppose the massing at the border of the opposing troops, you invite them in, and before you can act, they're 100 miles in. And that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. Biden was a fool and an idiot, not competent to lead the military, doesn't understand confrontation. Been dementia-ridden and a Parkinson's candidate from day one. Totally oblivious. Where is Waldo? Hiding Biden. He's still in the basement 3.5 years later. Neither he nor Kamala will take independent questions from an open press at a press conference. And the debate was about as sick as it gets, and I guess what you saw, if you're a liberal, you think Kamala won. If you're a conservative, you think Trump won. But Kamala didn't answer a single question, and it was obviously 3-1. The ABC moderators kept calling out Trump even on things that are true. And they didn't call her out once on anything. They didn't ask her about inflation. They didn't ask her or press her for a real answer on whether it's better or worse. They let her make up crap and lie about what Trump's policies are. Not one bit of confrontation from the moderators, not one follow-up question, not one call-out. Such a nonsense. Oh, we inherited a bad economy, you lying piece of crap! It's true that the economy did collapse under COVID in the last year of Trump's administration, but that's mostly because Democrats closed the blue cities and states. California, New York, Illinois, they all shut down. That's major points of industry for the whole country. If you shut it down, sure, but you were on the verge of a V-shaped recovery. Mortgage rates were low, interest rates were low, and jobs were coming back. You were on the verge of a V-shaped recovery, and Biden took over and destroyed it. He raised the price of oil, kicked off inflation, drove the price of gasoline and diesel through the roof, which cascaded into the increased prices of every product in the country, which kicked off and triggered the wave of inflation that was enhanced and advanced by the multiple trillion-dollar spending bills the Democrats promptly signed. And Kamala was the deciding vote on all of it. The deciding vote on taxing tips, the deciding vote on raising oil prices, the infrastructure bill, the green spending, the wasteful inflationary. She was the deciding vote on all of it. She hasn't changed her values because she's still a socialist. This is Thomas Freed. We'll be back in 5 after this. Get signed up as a subscribing member. Okay, this is Thomas Frieda on the Liberty Works Radio Network. Let's just get right back into this. Freedom comes from God, not government. And the truth shall make you free, because God's true plan for mankind is spiritual freedom, achieved through faith in God, not government. So the truth shall make you free. If you need the truth, you need to find your way over to tax-freedom.com and start reading, or find your way over to irszoom.com and pick yourself up a copy of The Simple Truth About Income Tax for just $6. It'll be the best $6 you ever spent in your life. Pick it up, get informed, be educated on the matter. Don't keep being a slave and a serf, watching your society be destroyed by an out-of-control government that has become the monster devouring you, literally, from within your wallet. So, let's get back to the discussion here. As I was saying, they did not inherit a bad economy. What they inherited was 4.1% growth, 1.4% inflation rate that they ran up to nearly 20%. They claim it's only 9, but I've told you before, they're lying. It's always 10% higher than what they announce. And you don't believe me? Go check the supermarket. Are prices 9% higher or 25 to 30? 9% my ass. It's a collective 20 to 25, 30% increase, higher for energy. Gas went from $2 to $4. It's now down around $3.50, but that's still a 75% increase. It's not 9%. Diesel is just as bad. The utility bills are just as bad. Food is almost as bad, being up collectively an average of about 20%. They didn't inherit a failing economy. They destroyed the recovering economy. They destroyed it with COVID mandates and vaccine mandates and firing and closing down and wearing a mask and plastic shields and closed the schools. They destroyed it. They inherited a strong recovering economy. Not a weak one. That's a straight up lie. She lies about everything. She says she's no longer, she hasn't changed her values. So is she or isn't she for letting the president absolve student loan debt without Congress controlling the purse strings? Is she for it or against it? We don't know. She lies. She doesn't stand for anything. Is she for bailing out criminals the way she set up the fund to bail out the Black Lives Matter arsonists, looters, and rioters? Is she for criminals or for prosecuting them? She says she hasn't changed her values. I guess she's still for the criminals. Does she want an open border or the wall? She said the wall was a vanity project. She hasn't changed her values. She wants an open border. She's lying and saying whatever she thinks she needs to say in order to try and win the election. Just like Joe Biden, she's a pandering, pathological liar. Just like Schumer, just like Pelosi, just like Nadler, just like Maxine Waters. That seems to be the trademark indicator of a diehard Democrat. Is a pathological liar. They can't open their mouth without distorting the facts. Does she want to defund the police or not? She said she does. Now she says she'll bring back the border bill. Well, that doesn't fund the police. That funds the admission of more illegal aliens. That's why Trump and the Republicans vetoed it. If they want a real immigration bill, have Schumer take up H2. It's been sitting in the Senate for 2.5 years, 3 years. And Schumer won't let it go to vote. There's your immigration bill. It's sitting on the desk of Schumer. What the Democrats made up in the Senate was just to distract you from the fact that they have refused for 3 years to sign that bill or allow a vote on it. Even allow a vote. They won't even allow a vote. How about transgender surgery for minor children, child mutilation and child abuse based on the identity crisis of the parent? Is she for transgender mutilation or not? Does she want CRT taught in the school and funded federally as a mandate or not? She hasn't changed her value. She's for teaching racism and dividing the American people on any basis they can. Transgender, homosexuality, race, national origin. Is she for Hamas and the terrorists of Iran? Or does she support the Israeli state and the Jewish state, our only ally and strongest and only democratic state in the entire Middle East? Which is it? She hasn't changed her values. She's for the terrorists. If you're Jewish and you vote for this creature, you're voting for the Holocaust to be repeated in Israel. Because it's the Palestinians, the Iranians, Hamas, and Hezbollah that will not accept a two-state solution. Israel has pretty much created the two-state solution since 2008, when they left Gaza and turned it over to Palestinian rule, and the people immediately elected Hamas as their governing authority, which immediately proceeded for the last 15 years to steal every penny to build tunnels under hospitals and schools into Israel to conduct terrorist raids on the Jewish state, which they have made part of their constitution, the destruction and entire removal of the Jewish state. That's in their constitution. So the Democrats here talking about a two-state solution are idiots. Idiots. It's not Israel and the Jews that won't accept the two-state solution. They put it in place 15 years ago. And the Palestinian state became a terrorist state dedicated to the eradication of Israel. They have no interest at all in maintaining a two-state solution. And the Democrats support the terrorists. So if you're Jewish and you're voting blue, you're voting Nazi. You're voting Nazi. The radical Islamic terrorists who were dedicated to eradicating Israel and the Jewish state have adopted Adolf Hitler's philosophy. You're voting for Nazis. How do people not understand this? How do universities allow protests for the terrorism to chase away the Jewish students? What the hell is wrong with these people? Is that really what you want your government to stand for? Endless war with Russia? And siding with the Islamic terrorists that murdered 2,000 Americans on 9/11? And haven't changed their attitude one bit? They've just transferred their focus of eradication and destruction to Israel. So, no, she hasn't changed her values. Does she support the Biden administration's attempt to rewrite Title IX to allow men to invade and take over the women's spaces in athletics and locker rooms and bathrooms, in high schools, middle schools, colleges, so that in 10 years there won't be any women left in sports? All the national championships, all the college championships, all the NCAA championships, all the scholarships will be taken by men who think they're women, but know they can't compete with the other boys in their sports. So they steal it away from the girls. Does she support rewriting Title IX? Or does she support the rights of women? Oh, that's right. They can't define what a woman is. So why on earth would they support them? They don't know what a woman is. They don't recognize biological science. They don't recognize the biological science, chromosomal genetics, XX or XY. They don't recognize the biological science of natural immunity, acquired immunity after recovery from a disease. These are the idiots who are trying to rewrite the rules of physical existence so that they're in control of all of it, and you are dependent upon them. And she says she wants to turn the page. Yeah, right. Let's turn the page and get rid of this problematic, destructive Democratic administration that she represents the continuation of. Is it a new path forward, or do you want to finish the work that Joe Biden started? Which one is it? She hasn't changed her values, so it's not a new path forward. That's just a lie. She wants to continue and finish the Democrat destruction of the quality of life and the takeover of every aspect of our society. From what you drive to what you eat to how you produce energy and run your automobile to and from work or in enterprise. Oh no, she's going to invest in America. We're going to invest. An opportunity economy. What the hell is that? You destroyed opportunity by making it too expensive. And government doesn't invest. It doesn't invest. It taxes and spends. And the Democrats are flushing the money down the toilet. $3 billion for 7 EV stations? Are you kidding me? Or was it $5 billion for 7 EV stations and $3 billion for 70 school buses? That's $350,000 a bus, which cost $50,000 to $60,000. 100 at tops. They spent $330,000 and got 70 buses. 70. Is that your opportunity economy? Oh, now we're going to build 3 million homes. Yeah, right. What, for $1 trillion? And we'll get 10 of them? They don't invest, they spend. And the more they spend, the less valuable your dollar becomes. The further out of budget they spend, the weaker the dollar becomes, the more it inflates. As goes the currency, so goes the fate of the nation. For the last 4 years, the currency has been getting weaker. How's your quality of life holding up under the Democrat administration? You really want more of this instead of going back to the economy that Donald Trump had cranking before COVID was made up and used as an excuse to close everything? Really? And Trump has laid out his plan. Drill, baby, drill. Bring down the cost of gasoline, bring down the cost of diesel fuel, bring down the cost of operating utility plants, will bring down the cost of the utility bills. Bringing down the cost of energy will allow some cost increases to come out of the products, which are carrying that cost increase, and will actually recover some of the lost ground in inflation. It won't get rid of it all. We're never going back to what it was, but you can get some of those cost increases back by lowering the cost of energy, because energy is everything. It's your economy, it's your jobs, it's your farms, it's your trucking, it's your transportation, it's your national security, it's your military, it's your quality of life, it's your comfort in heat, in winter for heat and summer for cool. It's your energy. It's your profit margin. Energy is everything. Expensive energy destroys and creates recession, and that's what the Democrats are promising. Cheap energy builds, produces productivity and wealth for the entire society, and that's what Donald Trump is promising. She's just making crap up, pandering. He's not for small businesses, and there are no opportunities. Sounds like we're coming up on the end of the show. This is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. We'll be back next week with more. Get signed up, get informed, get educated. IRSZoom.com and taxfreedom.com.